What's up, YouTube? So this is going to be the video of the two Plastic Fantastic prime lenses, the DA35 2.4 and the DA50 1.8. Question always comes up, should I get a 35 or should I get a 50mm lens? They kind of sort of serve two different purposes. One, the 35 obviously is a wider angle of view. So it depends more on your shooting environment, and if you want to do your best to kind of replicate what you would see with your own eyes in regards to the width and the scene itself, versus being able to zoom in just a tad bit with a 50mm. Now, mind you, I am doing this on a crop sensor camera. I do not have a K1, and these are not full frame lenses. So each one of these, Canadian anyway, are about 150 bucks. So let's get into some of the design differences. There isn't a whole lot of difference, but there is difference enough where you should be aware if you're that actually picky about what kind of lens style you're looking for. So let's get into that right about now. Okay, so on the left here I've got the 35 and on the right I have the 50. Now you'll notice the 35mm lens has a flush top lens. Now both of these actually can accept filters or the screw-on lens hoods, and you'll notice as you focus with the 35 it does extend. Now the 50 is a different beast altogether. If you look at the way this is designed, it's almost as if it has a built-in lens hood. You can actually see that the lens element is sunken down inside. Now as you focus with that, you'll notice it actually extends. So it's sort of like a front-facing internal focusing system. But other than that, I mean, the designs are pretty much the same. Obviously the glass element on the 50 1.8 is a lot larger than the one on the 35. Other than that, they are pretty much the same size. Actually, the 50 fits right over top of the 35. That'd be a pretty crazy looking lens, actually. But other than that, I mean, they are pretty identical. There isn't much difference between these two, so let's just jump right into the images themselves and which one would be best suited for your usages. So similar to the last video, I'm going to be taking a shot there of the basketball net, and I'm going to show the field of view difference between the 35 and the 50. So let me just put this down. And this time I'm actually going to be using a remote, because that was something that someone had brought up last time. So we're going to start at f2.4 on the 35, and I'm in manual mode. I'm going to be keeping an eye on the exposure to keep the exposure the same all the way across the apertures. And, well, let's go. Alright, so looking at the images, on the left side is the 35 2.4, and on the right side is the DA50 1.8. So starting with both lenses wide open, this is basically what the field of view difference is. You can see here that the 35 is quite wide in compared to the 50. So the 50 crops in to just about this section here, and then just across here, and then up. So you do lose a fair amount in regards to the field of view. So if you want to do more environmental portraits, that sort of thing, then the 35, especially on a crop sensor camera, would be a much better option than a 50. With a 50, you have limited room to move around and adjust your compositions and whatnot. Now, seeing as I did focus again on the basketball net here, let's zoom in quick to 100. Now remember, this is with the lenses wide open. And you'll notice that there is some purple fringing along here. Obviously, the field of view is different. Now, the compression from the 50 does provide for better bokeh. The other thing I noticed too, actually, on my K3, I couldn't go to aperture f2.4 on the 50 millimeter. I could only do 2.2 and 2.5. So let's go to 2.2 and see how that actually goes in regards to the differences here. And looks like the fringing is a little better controlled as we stop down the aperture. I mean, sharpness is pretty good on both of these lenses. This one seems to need a bit more work, though, in regards to aberrations that show up, especially right here. It's pretty evident. Okay, now let's go to 2.5 and zoom back in here. So this is at 2.5. Still a little bit of fringing here. However, the bokeh is still pretty consistent between the last image at 2.2. It's a tad bit more defined at 2.5. However, it is still pretty smoothly rendered out of focus. Alright, so that's 2.4 on the 35, so let's go to 2.8. And let's go to 2.8 on the 50. And now we'll have perfect back-to-back comparison here. Alright, so you can already see the out of focus area is drastically different. So with the 50, because of the compression due to the focal length it actually is, you actually do have better bokeh in regards to the focus blur for out of focus areas. However, with that said, you do, as I said, you do end up losing some of the capability of a wider field of view when you're using a 50 millimeter. So it does pretty much come down to exactly what it is that you're trying to achieve. Now I do notice, at least on my screen here, all these ropes and strings seem to be a bit on the purple side in regards to color balance, and it looks like there is some fringing along the edges as well, which seems to be missing from the 50 as we stop it down. Okay, so let's see, that was 2.8. Let's go to f4 and zoom in here at f4. Let's go to f4 on this one. I did try to keep it as even as possible. Okay, so at f4, you can see the out of focus area is starting to actually come into play a bit more here. It's not quite as blurred. However, it is still more blurred, and again, it's because of the compression and the field of view. It is a completely different thing. So you can't really, my personal belief, you can't really focus on which one is better, 35 or 50. They're completely different. They both achieve different things. 50 millimeter will give you a better out of focus area. However, 35 millimeter will give you a wider field of view. So again, it comes down to what you actually need from the lens itself. I really don't think anyone can come out and just answer that question. That's something you would have to figure out for yourself. So that was f4, and this is at f5.6, and you'll notice the fringing is gone on the 50 entirely. And it actually looks like it's almost gone on the 35 at 5.6. So at 5.6, these do seem to be coming into the super sharp and very well controlled aberration segment. Okay, let's go to f8 and go to f8 on the 50. Come on, come on. There we go. And now, out of focus area, still a tad bit more out of focus on the 50. However, the sharpness has drastically improved, which I would say starting at about f5.6. And it looks like all that fringing seems to be seems to be pretty much gone on the 35. So I think the 50 actually controls the aberrations a bit better. Yeah, I mean, this is, I mean, you're seeing it for yourself. And here's F11. Whoops. All right, and there's, again, difference in the field of view. And we'll get into the portrait thing in a second here. All right, so... All right, so at F11, we have... So let's see, did I mess up? I think that last one... Okay, so this was the F8 on the 50. Okay, so that's F8 on the 50. And then F8 on the 35. Let's just double check that. And the images are pretty clean on both of them. All that purple fringing is completely gone. And now let's just quickly go to F11. One more time. All right, there we go. Mind you, seems to be... why does this keep doing that? Man, it just wants me to show my face. That's all it is. That's all it is. All right, so going back on the string. See, this is what happens when you're doing this all on a laptop, and the laptop is just not quite cooperating with you. Okay, let's try this one last time. This is terrible. Oh boy. All right. So again, it's a lot better sharpness. The aberrations are gone. However, I do think the 50 is a sharper lens. And it's not just due to the fact that it has more compression or anything like that. I do think it is just a sharper lens altogether, entirely. However, there are trade-offs, as I mentioned. And what would a prime lens be without some portraits, right? So there's what the field of view is on the 35, and I stood on the same step. Camera was mounted to a tripod, and here it is on a 50. So there is a fairly remarkable difference. This would be a good torso lens, or more environmental, for the 35. And the 50 would be great for headshots. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. So, I mean, those are the image quality differences that I can show. Oh, yeah. Oh, look at that. I look like an elephant. All those cracks and everything. It's terrible. Ugh, absolutely terrible. What is going on here? Yeah, all those yeah, a lot more detail. All right, let's go back to the one with the way overexposed background, because that's not going to matter. I'm going to be just focusing on myself here. Oh boy, wow, that took a while. All right, so zooming in here. So here's the difference between the two, both at 100%. So I do, the 35 does not quite have as much detail as the 50 millimeter. However, it also gives a completely different look to the actual image that you're trying to capture due to its wider field of view. So you can't achieve this exact look with the 50 millimeter lens. You just can't, because it's not as wide a field of view. Right? You just can't. There's just no possible way to actually do that. Anyway, with that said, that's pretty much it for this one. I just wanted to show a comparison of 35 versus 50 side by side, because that's a question that constantly comes up all the time with every newcomer to photography, because that's all they ever hear is 35 and 50. You know, me personally, as a general walk around environmental lens, especially on a crop camera, 35 millimeter all the way. It gives you a wider angle of view. You can capture more within the scene. And if there are some elements that you aren't really happy with, you can always crop them out after the fact. However, on a 50 millimeter, it does limit your ability to move around, you know, and as you can see, like on the 35, you've got the vehicles in the background, you've got the street. On the 50, it's focused directly in. So a 50 is great on a crop sensor camera as a portrait lens, and for environmental shooting, I would definitely go with 35 millimeter. Anyway, those are my thoughts. If you like the video, leave a like. If you have not already, please do subscribe. It helps me out. If you'd like to support the channel, I leave that information in the description, so take a look at that. And if you have any questions, comments, let me know down below. And you guys will see me on my next video. I'm out.